I am the principal and president of Wolford Group. We essentially work with nonprofit organizations to maximize their fundraising potential. And how is that done? Primarily looking at the core of your organization and finding out what's holding you back from realizing the greatest success. So it could be anything from board training, looking at operational efficiencies, or how you're doing your fundraising, which also includes things like special events and event management. So with that said, we're also excited to have our friend here, Leya Simmons. So Leah is the co-founder of Better Unite, which is a software that is free to nonprofit organizations. I have not only used this software for special events for some of my nonprofits, I've also converted some clients to this as a full-blown donor management software, which it does a beautiful job. So she can tell you more about it. She'll be joining us a little bit later in the call. So let's just dive right in. It's the day after Giving Tuesday now, and I know that many of you participated in that campaign, and I hope it was successful for you. I'd love to hear more about that when we're talking later in the chat. And I do encourage you to go ahead and if you have a question you're thinking about, go ahead and put it in the chat, and Brooke will look at those at the end of the program, and the three of us will field those questions. So let's get started. So we know that special events are a key component to your overall fundraising mix. We look at nonprofits. Some of the people I've worked with, some of the nonprofits, they are doing many special events, and special events may make up 40 to 50% of their overall fundraising. Really, the recommended percentage is no more than 33%. It's something that you definitely want to have as part of your fundraising pie, but you also don't want to over event or rely too heavily on revenue. And I think at this point, when we're all kind of looking into our organizations and evaluating what's working best for us, especially looking at how we're impacted because of our event revenue or potential non-revenue, it's a good time to look at how much money your special events are bringing in and how much you rely on that revenue. So we know why we do fundraising events. It's to raise money primarily. We want to expand our network. We want to bring our message to new people and have them enter as maybe smaller donors, but keep them on the donor transom and hopefully keep them for years to come. And then raising awareness about our organization. So at this point, I'd like to bring in Brooke to talk a little bit about what's happening if you have to reschedule an event or if you're pivoting like so many of us are.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. As Ann mentioned earlier, we all know where we were in March when everything shifted for a lot of us and we had to make accommodations and make decisions. So our goal today is to kind of go through that process, provide some real world examples, provide case studies, provide options, and bring Leah in for some great tools that can help you continue to support your mission in this new normal that we're all in. So talking about that March timeframe, all of us with events went to, do we postpone to fall, which many of us did? Do we consider first quarter of 2021? And what does that look like? For your fall events that are going to still be held in 2020, we'll get into that a little bit in the next slide of what are your considerations for that? What are your concerns? What should you be thinking about maybe that you are not thinking about? So again, as Ann and Cindy both mentioned, the chat at the bottom of your screen, it should be lit up orange right now. Please enter your questions in there as we go through, and at the end I will address those and field it to the appropriate person to answer. Some of you have also had to cancel events. Ann and I have canceled events. So what does that look like? How do you make up that additional revenue? And then hosting a virtual event, which is new for so many of us. But I think that it's such an interesting tool, and I think that there is also a hybrid piece that is going to be so interesting to you all and has been to me for how to have a plan B as we move forward. So Ann and I polled our Montgomery County Development Professionals group to see what is everyone doing in this time. So I'm just going to go through these percentages really quickly. So 68% of the group rescheduled their event. 31% created a virtual event. 47% refunded attendees donations or their sponsorship, table ticket sales. 15% kept your attendees donation. And I think that's always an interesting conversation to create a communications tree and have your board or your committee reach out to everyone and give people the option of turning that money into a 100% tax deductible donation. And then 15% of our group said, you know, we need a solution. We're unsure of how to move forward. And that brought us to the idea to bring this presentation to you all today. So let's say you're in that 68% and your special event is a go, and your event is going to take place somewhere between next month and first quarter of 2021, which is what the time frame really we've been seeing with the clients that we're working with. What does that event look like? Your event could involve 50 people. We could be, you know, able to gather as we were before. We all hope we come back to that soon. The third consideration is you have contracts with your venue, with your hotels, with speakers, florists, other vendors. This is a great opportunity for you all to put questions in the chat. What challenges have you come up against, or what, you know, maybe you want to share something that has happened with being able to renegotiate a contract with a group that I work with, and we'll use them as an example later in the presentation. We were able to move their deposit to 2021 and renegotiate their contract to move everything out until spring. How are your board and volunteers continuing to be committed to this event? How do you continue to engage them in this time? I think it's really important to continue that conversation, to be transparent, let them know what you're thinking. And then for so many people, this fundraising budget, you know, your revenue streams, events are a big part of it. One organization I work with, this is, and I will get to them later in a case study, but you know, events, as Ann mentioned, should be 33% really of your event revenue, and they're closer to 80%. And so this presented such an interesting and precarious position that they had gotten themselves into. But we'll kind of talk about, you know, what's an option if you find yourself in that space and need to raise that event revenue. So also I want to say again, if any of you participated in Giving Tuesday yesterday and have anything to share, please share that with us in the chat. So these are the considerations. These are the things that we all talked about and brainstormed about. What do you need to consider? What are you, yes, events should be 33% of the revenue of your nonprofit. So the timing of your sponsorship and auction requests. So when is an appropriate time to reach out to your groups to ask for money? I think that's going to depend on what is your group made of. You know, who are your donors? One group that we work with that we'll get to later in the presentation, they are supported 80% by hospitals in the TMC, in the Texas Medical Center. So not a good time to ask them for sponsorship dollars. Your auction request, your revenue streams at the event, your raffles, your silent auction, your bid boards, are these made up of small businesses and restaurants, salons and spas that have been greatly affected? You know, what is the timing of that ask? Because we do want to be respectful in this time as well and adjusting your timelines to that. crowded event calendars for the fall. So as I said, so many organizations move their spring event to the fall. And what does that look like? And what should you be thinking about if there are several events, you know, right next to yours that are very popular, that you have a similar clientele that are attending? Competing for dollars in this time on pressing needs. You know, every nonprofit's mission is important. You wouldn't exist if it wasn't. But has the community prioritized dollars towards feeding people, towards, you know, basic needs, and how do you have those conversations? And then we get into some of the gathering liability concerns. So the safety of your guests, vendors. The Weston Texas Medical Center has remained open this entire time. There's so many venues that have not reopened, hotels and other third-party venues that we have held fundraising events at that aren't even considering a conversation until the fall. So you have limited venue options. But the safety of your guests, the Weston at the Texas Medical Center is having everyone continue to wear masks. They're looking at hybrid options. They're, you know, really trying to be forward thinking in how they remain open and still serve their clients and events and industry meetings. And if you have reluctant participants due to their comfort level, you know, maybe, you know, a majority of your participants will be reluctant to attend because they have an underlying health condition, or maybe they're taking care of an elderly parent or a child that has, you know, a suppressed immune system. So how do you make accommodations for those participants? I think being forward thinking and having a plan B and having an option for those people is going to be key in this time. And having a hybrid event or having a virtual option is going to be so beneficial, and it'll be interesting to see moving forward if we keep that component. And then the potential that gatherings are not allowed or discouraged. You know, there's so many unknowns. We just don't know what the fall is going to look like. And so having all of those accommodations in place, just in case. So I have alluded to a group that we work with, the Texas Nurses Association District 9 Foundation, and they have an annual gala. It was going to be their 30th gala that was going to be held at the Weston Texas Medical Center in November. And as I said, they're so largely heavily supported by the hospital systems and other healthcare groups. And it was just not appropriate. The board is made up of those same groups, and it was just not a time to be asking for sponsorships. So we moved that event to April of 2021. We were able to negotiate with the Weston and move our deposit to the spring. We also ended up negotiating a 2-year contract with them at the same rate that they offered. So that's something also to kind of keep in mind if you're working with a venue and they want to work with you and they want to give you great value for your money, consider doing a multi-year contract. But the challenge in all of this is our 25% deposit has been paid, but the next 50% will be due in October for our April 2021 event. So on our board call last night, there was a lot of discussion on, you know, does the organization plan on covering those costs and then start asking for funding 1st of November, 1st of December? You know, we're kind of keeping that on the table to think about because we just don't know what it's going to look like. So I think also as we are trying to continue to fund our missions that are so very important, we also have to consider where our sponsors, where our donors are at, and be respectful of that. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ann, and she's going to expand upon the gathering safely and other concerns that we should all be considering there.
Is really addressing the conversation of what's happening in our world and what will be happening in the months to come. So we know that there are measures beyond our control. Every state, it seems, has their own approach to when it's safe to open businesses, when it's safe to gather, under what conditions. So it's all over the map what states are mandating, and then what's happening at a local level. The county level may not be doing exactly what the state has mandated. So we're seeing a very diverse approach to how we social distance and live among each other in the public. But what I would encourage you to put first and foremost in your decision making is, as an organization, you have to keep the health and safety of your donors, volunteers, potential donors, servers, at the forefront. So it's important to put that concern first. So the real question is, how soon is too soon to have a face-to-face event? That is the million-dollar question. So I actually looked at this graph and it made so much sense to me. So this was from the Julia Solaris, April 23rd, 2020. So from April to June, unlikely that the virus will come back. And then you can see the graph that projects all the way out to January to March, that it's somewhat likely to come back, somewhat likely to have the coronavirus come back. Then you look at the risk of hosting your event, April to June, very high. So we know that people have taken that very seriously, looking at that time frame. That July through September 2020 will still be a high risk of hosting an event. And then once you get to the fall and on to the first quarter of January through March, that there's a moderate risk of hosting an event. So what are some of the major corporations doing about gathering? And I think it's interesting to look at these companies and how they're approaching live events. So Microsoft, for example, is not hosting any live events until 2021. And with Facebook, all of the meetings of 50 or more are being canceled until June of 2021. So obviously, there may be contracts that you have already extended if you were planning on a spring event, fall event, and Brooke touched on some of these items here that you could apply a deposit to the next event. One of the other options we have seen as well is if someone has donated something to you, say a florist, and we're donating flowers to your spring event, and you're doing maybe just an online auction and you're not having a face-to-face event, you're pivoting to completely virtual. Well, maybe that florist would convert those flowers into dollars that you could apply towards maybe a year of free flowers as an auction item. So working with your vendors and being very just creative about how you look at the funds that may have already been committed and how you can continue to help that business in the meantime if you're pivoting. So same with what Brooke was saying, applying a deposit to the next event. And then options for paid donors. I think this is a tough one because everyone would love for their sponsors to, if they've already committed their sponsorship dollars, they would like to keep those dollars, but that's not always the case. And we have to be respectful of our sponsors and offer a refund if we have to. Some, if they can pivot and just make it 100% tax deductible donation if you're going the virtual route. And then it's really important to implement a recognition plan for donors who are going to keep their commitment to you. So some of the things that we've been seeing, there are nonprofit organizations that are doing live stream events. Maybe they're doing a concert for donations. You know, I've seen the Glade Foundation do that, Love Fosters Hope, other organizations. There's some that are doing no gala galas. And this was even before the whole pandemic. I know that Montgomery County Women's Center went out on a limb several years ago and did a no gala gala. They just knew that people were gala'd out. People didn't want to dress up and go out. They'd be happy to make a donation and not have to go to an event. Virtual fun runs. I think this is awesome. There are a number of nun runs that you can find out there, but this particular one is one that's held for the St. John and Tita High School, and it's a no run walk. So essentially, this is a peer-to-peer fundraising platform where you're going to invite your friends to sponsor you to not run in the nun run. So spoof on NUN and NONE. And I think it's just genius. I love it. And their icon, their logo is a nun. And people put teams together like the Bad Habits or the Holy Sprinters. So just cute, clever, creative things. And essentially it's an online giving campaign for a run that no one's going to do. But what they do at the end of it is they pull together their group who has gotten sponsors or donors, and they are invited, the people who have done the fundraising on the organization's behalf, to a gathering where they receive a t-shirt for not running and celebrating the success of the nun run. So I thought that was very clever and a fun thing to do. Then people are doing virtual luncheons and virtual galas. I am going to let Leah a little bit later talk about Emancipate, which is an organization that raises funds for animals, and they just recently did a lunch-in as a virtual event. And then finally, hybrid events. I think this is going to be a solution that a lot of people utilize in the coming months to honor their potential guests who may not feel comfortable being in a face-to-face setting. So giving them an opportunity to participate either in person or not. So when we look at a virtual option, all of the things that are completely positives for the organization, and when you're weighing your decision about whether to go virtual or do a hybrid, if you go virtual, so obviously social distancing is not a problem, no risk to attendees' health, the costs are a lot less expensive. One of the things that I think is so important is that if you open it up virtually, you have a greater potential reach for donors who don't live in your community. They could live in Washington, D.C. or Portland, Oregon, and be invited to participate in your event. It's also a great way to re-engage lapsed donors, or maybe donors who in the past have made smaller contributions and they could jump back into something that's not a huge effort to get dressed and come to a face-to-face event. They could participate virtually. You don't have to worry about venue availability. And it's a wonderful way to recapture income due to a canceled event. So I'm going to turn it over to Brooke to give an example of how one organization pivoted recently.
Yes. So Ann and I are members of the Greater Houston Women's Chamber of Commerce, and I was having a conversation with Liz Grimm, who's on our webinar today, and we were talking about, you know, what this looks like for events, and we got into a conversation about the Greater Houston Women's Chamber of Commerce, and that they had this amazing luncheon planned for May 20th and a great panel of speakers that were already ready to go, and just kind of the pivot that this organization has taken over time with 3 different options. So they started out with the in-person event, like we all had done in the past, and never considered a hybrid event, or, you know, allowing people to join virtually for a smaller amount. And as we transitioned through the beginning of April, it became a hybrid event. And if you felt comfortable, you could still attend in person for $35 and have lunch and see everything in person, or for $10, you could participate virtually if you felt uncomfortable or were caring for someone or whatever the case may be. So that was interesting. And then we just noticed this week that they have pivoted again to their final solution of $10 for all attendees to attend virtually. So I think this is so interesting because as organizations, you know, some events are really exclusive, some events are really expensive. And so as we look at some of these virtual options, is this a good option in business practice moving forward to allow people to join virtually and participate in your auction items, participate in your paddles up, listen to an amazing speaker, or if you work with an organization that hosts a lot of luncheons where the speakers are amazing and you want to hear the speakers, you know, is that virtual option going to be something that's moving forward in the pivot? I know for myself, I have found that I am so much more productive and efficient since I've only been working from home and not driving all around Houston. So I'm trying to find ways that I can pivot my work style moving forward and do more things virtually and host more Zoom events. So it's just interesting conversation to think about. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Leya Simmons. Ann gave her a great introduction earlier, but this is, you know, not just someone that, you know, we decided to bring into the webinar because she has a great donor management system. That is true, but we also have professional work experience with her over the past 2 years. And as Ann said, some of our clients have transitioned to her software. Some of our clients were managing everything on an Excel spreadsheet. I work with a lot of small to mid-sized nonprofits, and Better Unite has revolutionized the way that they're able to manage their donors. And with that, I will turn it over to Leah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction, Brooke and Ann. Thank you for putting this together today, and the Woodlands Chamber as well. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys about virtual events. We have seen that there is a very big need that popped up as soon as COVID-19 hit, and we had clients literally overnight have to move what was going to be an in-person gala at a hotel to a Facebook Live, and use the tools they had, the software tools that they had at their disposal, which in general were an iPhone, Facebook, and the, you know, giving tools that our software provided for an event, which were, you know, the silent auction support and live auction support. And while, you know, there was some success with some of those, that was obviously, you know, moderate and different, and it was a kind of terrible and chaotic time. My team at Better Unite started just really paying attention and to see, you know, where were the hangups, what were the problems with these virtual events or these actual in-person events that jumped really quickly over to virtual events. So we took notes and we began to create, and that's really how we've built our platform, is just in collaboration with folks like Ann and Brooke and other organizations. And we've never, you know, built hoping that people would come, we've built along with. And so we actually immediately started being in touch with both event planners as well as auctioneers, because we had a lot of the tools that were needed for virtual events within our platform, like you know, registrations and the silent auction piece being online and an immersive guest experience. And then also that kind of team fundraising piece. So you're seeing some of that here. The team fundraising piece that could enable virtual tables, right? But they all lived in different places. So we pulled all of that together. We optimized around a live auction piece, because if you think about it, that's kind of one of the bigger pieces at a fundraising event that does need the energy of the room, right? Like the paddle raise and the auctioneer being able to quickly, you know, identify who has bid. And we saw in real time that Facebook Live and Zoom even weren't able to really accommodate for that sort of thing. So we optimized around that piece in collaboration with some auctioneers, and we then integrated with live stream tools like Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Vimeo Live, and Zoom. And then there's also the ability for folks just to use their own live streaming platform or a streaming software, and that can be integrated as well. So when we put all of that together, we packaged it into a virtual event tool that has now been used by quite a few organizations. Guests register, and they then are immediately texted and emailed a link to their own immersive guest experience. And then they are able to, while watching the live stream, are able to see, you know, the live auction items. They're able to bid and participate in a silent auction, and they are able to make donations or fund a need levels or, you know, event offers like raffle tickets, etc. So that was the piece. And I think maybe if we advance the slide one more, you'll get to see what that looks like. So this is a registration page on my platform. I'm allowing for you to register, auction. You can see at the top, there's that join live stream piece. And then let's go one slide further, and you can see there's this live auction. One more slide. There we go. So you see there's this side-by-side view of your YouTube live stream on one side, and the ability to move through, and those toggles up there will let you move through live, silent auction, etc. So, you know, kind of listening to and collaborating with our organizations that were needing this sort of support, we were able to build out and really just refine what we already had and bring it into provide the software support. So I do want to talk about that, because while my platform, Better Unite, is great software support for being able to do the fundraising aspect and pull in a live stream, as you know, potential organizations putting on live stream events, I think there are a lot of considerations that need to be placed on the production and what you're going to do with that live stream component. It is one of the reasons that I would recommend using a platform like Better Unite that does not, you know, charge you for a contract or a subscription or something like that, that is more transaction based, because the truth is, with these virtual events being as new as they are right now, while there are a few folks that have, you know, kind of played around in this arena in the past, you know, having people gather for an hour or an hour and a half, you know, listen to music, interact with an auctioneer, we just don't really know what that's going to look like as far as revenue for the nonprofits. So our platform has solved to that problem by being transaction based in our revenue model, and not asking for a large outlay of money. Now, I do think that there can be some value in that's very easy to do this via Zoom and have that be your interaction with your audience, and record. I would suggest recording as much of it as you can. You'd be surprised how much video can seem live, and then you have total control over what's happening. This is where you really need to pull in an Ann and a Brooke and a Wolford Group to really optimize around that piece. Those are dollars very well spent. And then also a production company that can make it look and feel like something that is, you know, happening in your living room, and that has the finesse around it that your organization requires. I totally agree with Ann and Brooke as well that hybrid events are our future. Honestly, maybe moving forward. As a matter of fact, I remember talking to Ann right away in this crisis, and her saying, you know, this is here to stay. And I think that's really proving out for all of us. So while we have this virtual tool, we are now optimizing in this literally next week around the hybrid event so that we can enable a live auctioneer or an admin to, you know, with the click of a button, accept bids in the room as well as online. That's really the only piece we have to optimize around as far as software goes, because the rest of it is a virtual experience, whether you're in the room or not. But those are the things I would say, you know, whether you're looking at Better Your Night or you're looking at another tool, that those are the pieces that I would really look to is, you know, how can that live auction experience approximate a real life experience? And what is my guest going to see on their screen? You know, how much a part of this are they going to feel? So I think that is all as far as Better Unite goes. Oh, Emancipate, yes. So we just had one of the organizations that uses Better Unite did a lunch in, which I thought was the best wording ever. And they did this, I think it was just on Monday actually. And so they enabled virtual teams to, or team fundraising, which is essentially peer-to-peer fundraising, but we included it in our tool. And so they got their committee members and their board members to create virtual tables, and that allowed for each individual committee member, board member to create their own personalized page, inviting their friends in, and that kind of adds like an extra layer of accountability, because we don't know who's going to get distracted, who's going to forget to sign up. Also on your registration page, having these donate now buttons, maybe also showing the people that have registered. You know, there's these little kind of psychological tricks I think that we need to consider when we're thinking virtual events, because there are a lot of differences from the in-person event as well. So Emancipate did incredibly well with their fundraiser. I think they raised something close to $100,000, which was really close to their actual goal in the first place. And that was just with a suggested donation upon registration. I believe it was a $20 suggested donation. I think they had a lot of folks give them $100 actually. I remember seeing that stat at some point. So we're starting to see these actually happen, which is really exciting, because the truth of it is, and no matter who you talk to, nobody has that much experience in this kind of event. And so then that's scary. That is, I really recognize, and my team really recognizes the kind of fear that puts us in doing something that's brand new. I have a lot of confidence in my tool because we've actually pulled pieces together that we already knew worked, and we simply layered them one on top of the other. And then the truth is, there's been a whole lot of sleepless nights over here with my group where we have tested and run mock trials. And actually I have a fun recording that we did just a couple of days ago with an auctioneer, and it was exciting. Like it was really fun to be a part of a test auction online. So don't think it can't be done. I would say that. And again, lean on people like Ann and Brooke for the creativity, because this software is software, and production, you know, folks can do production things, but we need the people that can take these tools and do interesting things with them moving forward. And there's a big white space there for people to step in and you know, challenge us, and also show up for us in different ways.
So Leah, I want to jump in and thank you so much, because technology is so intimidating. I think not just just the average person, but knowing that an event's success is relying on technology to deliver the way that it needs to in order to have a successful virtual or hybrid event. I wanted to just give an example that I thought was interesting. I was reading about Interfaith Ministries in Houston who had their tapestry gala, and they ended up pivoting to live stream it. And what they did, and we've talked about this for an event that Brooke and I are working on, having for their paid sponsors, I think they were at 70% when all of this happened, and they realized they couldn't have their event in person. But for their sponsors who had paid, they had catered meals delivered to them, to their home, and made sure that they each had a link and an invitation to join them for the virtual event. So I think you can be creative, especially in this time when restaurants could really use the business. Caterers are hoping that contracts don't get canceled. And so I think you can get creative and also provide that level of donor appreciation and creating a unique experience that is enjoyable, even if you're eating your catered meal from home and watching the event online. One of the things I'd like for us to do is have plenty of time to field questions, but I thought it might be helpful to give a real life scenario, case study in one of the ways that Wolford Group has helped a client pivot. And Brooke, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about that.
Yes. So just to start off, and I'll say this several times, this is not the In the Pink in the Woodlands. Ann manages the In the Pink in the Woodlands, and I manage an In the Pink in the Kingwood, Lake Houston area. So just so you all know, this is not In the Pink in the Woodlands. So In the Pink in the Kingwood area was entering their 13th annual luncheon planning when COVID-19 hit. This is an organization that relies upwards of 80% on events for funding their mission. And their mission is to provide mammograms to women who cannot afford them through a program called Project Mammogram. And so the challenge was, as we move forward, you know, the challenge was we're hearing time and time again from the chairs, consideration from the community that canceling might be the best route to go. And this was mid-March that we started having this conversation, right when COVID hit. And so what we decided was we went through, you know, a list of things to consider. And so I'm going to share all of those with you all. First of all, you have to know that as everything in the world is canceled, your mission is not canceled. Your programs may be postponed, but the population you serve is not canceled. And in a time like this, as we will see with women that need mammograms, the need is going to grow. The need will be greater as people will be unemployed, they will lose their insurance. And so on the back end of this, there is going to be a greater need. So the goal would be, you know, always to continue to fund your mission. How do you be creative to continue to fund your mission and then account for the increase in need during a time such as this? So the risk versus benefit analysis came from, okay, what if we get to September and we need to cancel or postpone the luncheon? We have spent all of this time planning an event and taking in some sponsor revenue, but was that the right thing to do for this particular nonprofit? Again, this is a specific case study. What financial contractual costs would be incurred? You know, what type of risk would that put on the charity? What if we were unable to get some of those deposits back? Those are mammogram dollars that we would have spent. Who would be affected regardless if we decide to continue, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then, as I spoke about earlier, your revenue streams at the event, your raffle and bid board donors, are they going to be in a position to give? So the considerations are very specific to this event. Kingwood and the surrounding community has had such an economic impact in the past few years from Hurricane Harvey and then the flood with Imelda. The luncheon there also is very heavily supported by small businesses. A lot of our sponsors, a lot of our attendees, a lot of our donors to our bid board, raffle, lots of small businesses. And so it became that consideration of the community. We moved forward after Harvey and had our luncheon, and it was great. And the community looked forward to gathering, but again, we weren't in a situation such as this completely. And we didn't have the health aspect. So that was a consideration. And then we dove into our donors, and I encourage all of you to do this, and you may have already spent time in this quiet period doing some of this, but really dive into your donor database and put them into some buckets. So as we looked, we saw that 70% of our event table sales and sponsorships were small businesses. 85% of donors to our revenue streams at the event were also small businesses. So this kind of, you know, when you start to dig into the data and you start to talk through things with your board and with your committee and with your staff, the answers come to you. So as Ann and I said, we want this to be thought-provoking. We want you to apply this to your organizations and continue to put your questions in the chat for us. So the solution that we came up with was to cancel the October 13th event. So, I'm sorry, the October 16th event, it would have been the 13th annual. We decided that it was a really unique opportunity, and I think you look for the unique opportunities. You look for, in a time of crisis, well, how can I pivot this into something that could be beneficial long-term? And for this particular organization, the benefit long-term was to create an online donor giving campaign. That was a huge piece of their pie that was missing, and the Wolford Group was contracted to work on their In the Pink event. They don't currently have an executive director, so it was a great way to continue to engage the chairs, continue to engage the committee, and come up with an online donor giving campaign. And as Leah spoke to a moment ago, you know, engaging a larger amount of donors that aren't at an exclusive luncheon, that could give $20 or give a monthly gift of $5. We all know those donations add up. So I'm so excited to see where we are on the other side of this and present another Wolford Group presentation on all of this, maybe in 6 months or so. So we do want to add a virtual component because we do want to leave the option open to have some type of gathering in October. Now, when I say the word gathering, this would be a lighter shade of pink celebration. It may be that none of us are gathering in person, it's all a virtual component. It may be another idea that was brought up by one of the committee members, which I think is great. She said, I think we should model it after a political watch party. And instead of having our 350 guests in attendance, we have different groups of people. Maybe they're your table, maybe they're, you know, your local group that you're involved in, whether it's a chamber group or a Rotary group. You get all of your people together at someone's home or at a restaurant or at a place of business after hours, and we do a virtual watch party with 13 different places, and we do our event in that way, which I think is a really neat idea. Or we have a small event with some of our top donors, maybe, you know, 50 or 60, and we have a cocktail event, and then we do something like Ann talked about with a party pack for other people where you can pick up dinner and join us virtually and celebrate and, you know, toast to the funds that we have been able to raise and still keeping that mission at the forefront. So what does the strategy for something like this look like? A lot of communication. So the piece that we're building out is the social media and email campaign component. That's going to be huge. We're going to have to over communicate in this time. And then the communications tree, as I spoke about, with looking at your donor database and maybe your potential donors or past donors that haven't given in a while, and put those into a tree where you identify board members to contact certain donors. You identify chairs and committee members and staff to personally call people and let them know what's happening and ask for their donation, and then continue to communicate with them. And then super important to partner with an online giving platform. So this is one of the organizations that we have utilized Better United with, and it has been great. And I'm super excited to build out the piece for their donor database as well. We went one step further and said, you know, we are in, you know, an economic time where we don't know where our funds are going to be, and how do we get to the number that we feel like we need to be at to meet our fiscal needs in this upcoming fiscal year. And so we were able to identify and confirm an organization that will match the funds that we raised dollar for dollar 100% through December 31st. So that's really exciting and wonderful, wonderful thing. The board worked with us on that. And then what are the benefits? Some of these are very much common sense, but just minimal financial investment. You know, we don't have the $40,000 to $50,000 of expenses in putting together a luncheon, but we still expect to meet or exceed our event revenue goal, which is really exciting. We are able to keep our co-chairs and our committee engaged. We thought that was really important, especially in this time of social distancing, and people that are excited to support your cause and champion your mission and ask for funds on your program's behalf. Keep them engaged. And then the opportunity to grow your donor base and increase exposure for your charity, your program, and your needs. And your program mission continues. So really that's our plan. We're diving deep into all of the different components of that, but we're excited and the board's excited, and we feel like it was the best decision for this organization. And Ann and I just wanted to share the case study with you to show something that is a little different, but pulling in all the pieces, still keeping a virtual component, being able to really look at your organization and your donors and see, you know, what really works best for us in this time, and making that decision early on. I'm not going to lie, it was very scary to talk to the board in April and start presenting some of these scenarios. So we feel strongly in this, and we're going to move forward. And I would like to encourage you all to put some more questions into the chat as I'm going to start reading some of these. And Ann and Leah, if you'll both take yourselves off of mute, we'll get started.
So Brooke, I'm just going to wrap up a little questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A couple of event essentials. So like, please set a fundraising goal and be very specific about what it is that you need, and make it realistic if you're pivoting. And having some organization, individual, corporation that will match the dollars raised, and put that in a window of time where there is, I love the idea with Brooke's event that they will match as late or through December of this year, but give it a time frame. Over communicate during this time. This is such an unknown time for so many people, especially participants. They, for the most part, if they haven't participated in something virtually, they're going to need some hand-holding. And so I would encourage you to be very clear and specific about how it works, how you get online. We even talked about an event that we'll be doing coming up in June, actually, which is a hybrid event, having an online support, like a 911. I can't get into the stream, or my donation is not going through, or so having someone there to walk them through it, knowing there's a number to call with access to someone who can help immediately. As far as program execution is concerned, we can talk more deeply about that. That's something that we're all exploring at this time. But what we are encouraging is for you to look at the technology, and if it's something you can do yourself, or assign a tech team internally to manage the Facebook Live and watch the donations through Better Unite or whatever platform you're using for participation for your online auction or Paddles Up, or secure a professional team that kind of takes the pressure off of that. Also, like Leah was saying, you can record your program ahead of time. You can have your speaker do their part virtually and record that ahead of time, and take some of those unknowns out that may create stress in fully doing a live event and all the components for that. So a few other tidbits: limit your program. People have short attention spans for the most part, and looking at a screen for longer than an hour can get tedious. I know that many of you are looking at a screen right now and it's been almost an hour, but just an agenda. So keep it simple. Welcome and thank you. If you're doing your auction, definitely put your mission at the forefront with a client testimonial and ask, and being as specific as you can be about where those dollars are going and why they're needed. You can definitely have entertainment. You can definitely have a speaker. And like I said, provide a hotline for participants. So just another little tidbit here. In these times, not making a decision is a decision. And like Brooke said, it was scary to bring that recommendation to the board of this organization to say, hey, we need to imagine something very different from what we ordinarily do in October that we've done for the past 13 years. So this has to look different. This is what we're proposing, and get them to be engaged in the reimagining of what those events could be or were. And then looking at how doing a virtual event can expand your donor reach. And don't be afraid to ask for what you need. I think I've said that time and time again. During this time, people want to help and they need to know what that looks like. So if that means putting a virtual table together for an event that they're going to watch online, and inviting their sisters from across the country and their mom and a friend from college, whatever it looks like, let them work on your behalf and help you expand your network to support the mission that you're working so hard to fulfill. So with that, Brooke, let's turn it over to questions, and we can field them depending on what they have to do with, and Leah and Brooke and I are happy to help. And if you have to jump off, thank you so much for participating today. If you want us to reach out to you, we are doing complimentary consultations right now. I know that Leah will do the same. And so if you have questions, you want to connect with us, just put your name and contact information in the chat if you have to go. And if not, we'd love to field some of your questions.
Okay, yes, thank you everyone for your participation today. This was so fun for us to put together. We love research and data, so I think we might be doing more of these, we found. But the first question is to repeat the statistics for event revenue. And so yes, the recommendation is 33% of your revenue budget should be supported by events.
Or no more, I would say.
Yes, I'm sorry, no more.
Yeah.
A couple of you have asked if we will be sending out a copy of the presentation, and we are going to make the recording available, and we will be in touch about that. Roxanne also offered to share this with the YMCA of Greater Houston group. So yes, if you would just let us know who you're sharing it with, I think that would be great, but we would love for you to share. Question coming in, what about sponsors who are looking for networking benefits from their sponsorships? How can we provide that with an online event? Ann, I'm going to give that to you.
Okay, so I'm thinking that might be a question from the chamber, but I'm not going to make that assumption. The face-to-face networking is so important. And, you know, I think that that's why people support events a lot of times, is that they want to be in the room with other people that could benefit their business, or that they just want to meet or could learn something from, or whatever the case may be. The networking component will have to come at this point, depending on the timing of your event, getting creative with social media, connecting people. This is where we have the greatest opportunity now to be more intimate, and I don't mean that in a weird way, but picking up the phone and calling people. And I think asking, if this is regardless of who's asking this question, to your donors who are making these donations, what's meaningful to you? If we can't get together face to face, where can we create value for you? So asking them, I think people give for very different reasons. Some people may give a $5,000 sponsorship and say, keep all the money. My mother died of breast cancer, and so I don't need to have networking options. But I think the more communicative you can be with the people who are giving you the money and automatically expect to get certain benefits, talking to them and making those calls, and as an organization deciding what you can offer, but finding out from them where they see value.
That's great, Ann. We have a comment. Mindy said she loves the communication tree, and she's finding that more people are picking up the phone more and more as we aren't able to see each other in person. And Ann just alluded to that as well. And I think that's been such a benefit of this time, which is great. We're able to connect with people in different ways. So as we look at what our models look like moving forward for, like fiscal year 2021, 2022, it'll be interesting how many of these things we pull forward with us. So this is going to be a question for Leah. Any advice for working with children in the virtual event space? Challenging since children are already using online school, parents want to limit screen time, shorter attention spans, etc. Thank you. Oh.
Unmute Leah, there you go.
I'm here now. Okay, there we go. That's for me because I have 5 kids. There's no good answer to that question. It's day by day. Some days you'll catch me literally with a 3-year-old sitting right beside me on the chair with me. I do think, though, that if you are the host or if you are the organizing aspect of a virtual event, I was listening to an auctioneer yesterday actually kind of walk through their process, and they were planning to have a hotspot, so like a Verizon hotspot, so that should there be a storm and your internet goes out, you would be able to toggle. I mean, I toggle from my phone when I do demos as a software company a lot. So paying attention to that tech piece, that doesn't answer your child problem. I recommend older children. It is hard, and there's no one right answer. Unfortunately, it is another reliance on iPads and headphones and that sort of thing to engage kids while you try to move through it. But I also think that there's a lot of grace right now. So I have been on calls with Microsoft and had my 3-year-old come up and try and climb into my lap, and everybody laughs, and at the same time the Tech for Social Impact lead from Microsoft's dog is barking in the background. So people are understanding of the fact that we're all at home, we're all doing our best and showing up the way that we can. So
so Brooke, can I jump in? And
yeah, please.
I don't think it's been asked on the questions, but Leah, can you just let everyone know how, because people are curious to know, how do you offer a donor management software that's free to the nonprofit? Can you just address that so that people kind of have an idea how it works?
Yeah, so we built Better Unite to be a comprehensive fundraising tool. So all the pieces that touch fundraising, we have a solution for. That includes donor management, grants management, pledge management, volunteer management, membership management, and then this big robust event tool that now has branched into virtual events as well. We put all of that together, and we make it all free so that organizations like Brooke was talking about, the smaller organizations, can come in, begin using it without having to lay out a bunch of money in the first place, and then their they pay for the platform essentially as they raise money. Now that is an incentive to my company to continue to do really good work, stay ahead of the curve, and be very, provide really robust support, because our revenue model, my revenue as a company is tied to the success, the fundraising success of the organizations that are using it. So, that's essentially how, we obviously offer, I guess it's not obvious, we offer other kinds of support. We can come on site when we used to be able to go on site, when we will again, but we can also provide support during, we are actually, Ann mentioned having a tech line. We're actually going to offer a tech line available to your donors or your guests through Better Unite. And that'll be so there's ways, we call it proing up your event. There's ways that you can enhance, some of our support, but that's the essence of it. And we've found that this model works. It's very successful. It is new. I know that's another new piece. It's not the way that people are used to having business done, but I think we're proving it out.
So Leah, and I just want to jump in because I noticed in the chat, so the question about children, this is from someone from the Woodlands Children's Museum. And so the question is how can you do events for children, as they're doing a great job. I can speak to the museum. I've listened to story time several times with my granddaughter. They're offering amazing virtual programs to keep children interested and enriched. But I think that was the question.
Yeah. And I think that, and I've seen my, my son, his preschool, they have done virtual story times, and the, older children have engaged with it. I think your call for fundraising around that is probably in the registration piece, when you ask, when the parent registers, right, for that. I probably would push this back over to you guys, Ann and Brooke. How would you put out a children based, because my software is more for the fundraising SidebySide, so that's inherently for adults, right? It's not really for kids. So but if you are trying to fundraise around children's programming, I would say there's maybe like a text to give bar at the bottom, so that parents are, as they're watching their kid, can text and give. And then there's and I don't want it to be easy for my 3-year-old to come up and click that button and donate, so I don't want a donate now button. I want it to be a text, like it's going to require an adult. And then, like I said, during the registration process, you make a strong case, a compelling case for the gift then.
I think that's great. And I think people are so grateful right now to have activities like that. I think it's timely to put the request out there. And I think you all participated in giving now, but Jennifer, if that's not enough of a question, we are certainly, enough of an answer to your question, we're certainly available for a complimentary consultation, and Leah would be happy to talk to you as well further about the software to support something like that.
So the next question is, what is the farthest out fundraising event we've seen canceled or moved out? It sounded like October or November 2020 from the examples you gave. And I think, Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, it's November 2020 for the Wolford Group. Do you want to add to that? Please do. And then Leah, please share your insight as to what you've seen in transitions or pivoting for events. How far out have you seen people already making those decisions?
So I can say that Brooke has an In the Pink event in October. I have an In the Pink event in October that we are actively watching. We're not standing still, but we plan fully on having that event in October, but we are planning for a plan B and plan C in case things are not where we hope that they are with that. So personally, with clients we're working with, October is the latest that I've been involved with, but I think it's very interesting to see the two different scenarios. Brooke has an event that's a week earlier than our In the Pink of Health event, and we're approaching them very differently. So I think a good number of people are pushing their events out to the first quarter of 2021 just because they feel safer. They don't want to crowd in and be competing for fundraising dollars with everyone else who either had an existing fall event or has pushed from spring to fall. So some people have postponed altogether or canceled their event that was in the spring. An example of that locally is Habitat for Humanity, who had an April gala and they canceled that. So Leah, what are you seeing with events that you've been involved with in Austin, surrounding area?
I think, yeah, the farthest out I've seen go completely virtual is a Dancing with the Stars for Center for Child Protection. That's one of the bigger galas in Austin, and they're actually using Better Unite, and they're completely going virtual. They're not going to have any in-person component to it at all. The reverse, the soonest that I'm seeing a hybrid event is in June. I actually am working with Partnerships for Children here, and they are gathering a board and maybe some major sponsors, I believe, into the space that they normally have the event for a, social distance in-person component that will also be at the that will also be live streamed to everybody else. And they are, to accomplish that, they have engaged a production designer team to facilitate that piece. So there's kind of the two examples, the two extremes.
Okay, and I am going to just do one more question and then we're going to wrap up. Dawn asked if Better Unite software would work for a conference such as the WISE conference.
We do
use the software for conferences?
Yes, you can use the software for conferences. Also, I was actually going to say that, and Dawn, I'll come right back to you, but you can use our software. We have a call list functionality that helps that call tree piece as well. We built it as part of a political vertical because you have politicians that will call major donors, but it's an underused option for nonprofits. And so we actually built that into our tool as well. Yes, we have a showtime and scheduling and sessions functionality as well. You would just link those up with Zoom calls and be done. I make it sound so easy. There are pieces to it, but it's super possible, and it's really not that hard.
That's great. Great answer. Okay, so there may be some questions that we didn't capture or get to address, but I just want to thank everyone for participating and for making our world a better place to live. And if you have any further questions or want to reach out to us, don't hesitate. But we enjoyed the conversation today. And Leah, thank you so much. And Brooke, thank you so much. And thanks again to the Chamber of Commerce. Y'all have a great day.